Welcome to the Jonty and Mac podcast. I hope everybody's well out there. I'm hosted tonight with me, Jonty, and my co-host, Mac. Mac, how are you?
How you doing, everybody? I'm Mac, as you know, and if you don't know, now you know.
Oh, how are you, Mac? You well, yeah?
Yeah, I'm all right, John. Very, very lucky today. With a different type of podcast for people to listen to.
Yeah, today's episode is substance abuse, and the substance that we're going to be talking about is alcohol. And it affects, especially in this country in Ireland, it affects so many people, and it's taken a grip over so many people. And it's also a special day for the two of us because we're very fortunate enough to have been given some time by our guest, which is our fourth guest, which is Tom. Tom is a former alcoholic, and he's been through the worst times, and he's also been through the best times, which he's living right now. And fortunately, he's also been able to give back a lot, and he's changed things around. So Tom, thanks very much for first of all giving us your time and coming onto the show and having a chat with us. We really appreciate that.
Thanks, Jonty, and thanks, Mac. Great to be here.
I suppose if what we'd like to do is if you want to give us maybe a bit of a backdrop, like not saying too much personally about yourself, but like, for example, how it started, and then how it just kind of declined, and then you didn't realize, or whatever you want to give us as your story. It's your time, so you just fire ahead.
Okay, thanks, Jonty. I'll start off by saying that I'm Tom and I'm an alcoholic, and just a small clarification, Jonty, is that I don't class myself as was an alcoholic. I will always be an alcoholic, and I'm okay with that today. It's not a stigma for me today. When I first came around into the recovery program, I thought an alcoholic was a guy or a woman who was, homeless, who was on the park bench and drank out of brown paper bags. I had no understanding the power of alcohol. I just didn't understand that, but I understand that today because, I've been around for a good few days, as we do say, and my life today is so much different than what it was like. And, like when I'm talking about myself, I usually share about my experience, my strength, and my hope. And, what was it like now, and what was it like then, and I came from Dublin, as you can hear in the accent, and I grew up in a council area. All my friends, when we were teenagers, we all drank. It was normal. The families in my family, a lot of people drank. It was all normal stuff that people got drunk. And just a funny thing that when I was a teenager, I used to go to 11:30 mass. And recovery is not about religion or anything like that, but I used to go to 11:30 mass on a Sunday. And one of the reasons I used to go there, which I loved, was you didn't go into the mass, but you sat outside in the field, at the church grounds, and everyone would be talking. The older people that was from the area be talking about what they did on Friday night and Saturday night and all the trouble they got into, and in those days there used to be people used to get the horses and they'd be galloping around the roads in where I came from, and like it all sounded really kind of funny. And then like Sunday morning they'd be all heading up to the pub, and I used to think, oh God, I wish I could do that, and when I drank in the early days, it didn't affect me. The one thing I remember about taking alcohol when I was young was that it made me 10 feet tall. But also what it did was, it deadened these feelings that I had, it suppressed them
Yeah.
into that I didn't feel, so I could be 10 foot tall and I drank to get drunk, but that's what everybody did. I didn't think I was doing anything differently, and the aspiration that I had was to get served in a pub. That was the huge goal in when I was growing up, and the most awkward age that I had, I always felt was 16. I always felt I was an adult, but I wasn't classed as an adult because I thought I should be able to drink in pubs, because I didn't get drunk like my friends did. I drank like what I used to say to myself, I drank like a gentleman. If there is such a thing, I'm not sure there is, but like we used to drink in the fields.
Yeah.
We used to get people to go into the off license, and in those days, we'd get like, maybe we'd get 24 bottles of harp or something like that, and we'd all go up to the skills and we'd all be drinking. But I was different, you see, because I got two large. I mean, I was a real old man for my age because I got two large bottles of Guinness and I got a little naggin of whiskey and a little small bottle of red lemonade. And, I used to go up to the fields with them. And because everybody used to drink real quick to get drunk, but I was different. I drank slowly and they would drink and get drunk to go down and stand outside the chipper. And, and that was kind of the highlight. But for me, it was like, well, I'm not doing that because I'm different. And, and in those days, like alcohol, it didn't affect me. It was actually kind of fun, the waking up with the hangovers. It wasn't so bad, and the crazy thing about alcohol that I find is when I look back is, we'd meet the next day and be like, geez, that was a great night last night. I can't remember anything. And she's like, how can that be a great night when you can't remember anything? And as my drinking progressed, it got heavier. And when I met a woman, the woman that I married, my drinking really took off, and people around me would say, if you weren't with that person, you wouldn't be drinking like you are. And of course, I used to believe that, oh, that's probably right. I'm drinking because of that other person. But it wasn't. I drank because I was an alcoholic. I never understood I was an alcoholic. It was easy for me to blame other people because I didn't understand anything. And as I got older, I became more of a loner, and I drank more on my own. But as in when I was married, I felt pressure in the family. I made excuses to go out of the house. Like I'd say, I've got to go down and pay a bill down on a Saturday morning, or I'm going for to buy a takeaway curry or something like that. But I went in to drink. It really wasn't about going to get the food or down to pay the bill. It was about getting drink. And that was my coping mechanism in those days. But the part that for me was difficult, and I don't say anything about my drinking as though I'm the victim, because I'm not the victim. Being an alcoholic, I caused a lot of destruction around me. I affected a lot of people in my life by my drinking. Now I'm in kind of the other way, in a spiritual way of looking at it. I never set out to hurt people, but I did. I did hurt them because, I was wrapped up in me. I was wrapped up in my drinking. The longest love affair I had was with alcohol, because I really believed that alcohol was a savior. That alcohol would fix every problem I ever had. And yet every drunken session I had, I'd wake up, the problems were still there. And the only way of, relieving the pain was to keep drinking. And of course, that set off a spiral. And nobody can put up with an alcoholic. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, because that's talking about other people. But in my case, how could I expect someone to put up with me, coming home when it suited me, coming home in different moods, drinking my brains out, maybe not going to work. All of these things are me going further down spiraling down into hitting the rock bottom, and I ended up I ended up with the marriage broke up, and I ended up with huge bitterness, and I ended up in a flat in South Circular Road, feeling really sorry for myself and really hard done by. My kids have been taken off me, and look at poor me. You know, I've ended up with nothing. But I could never see that I had caused a lot of damage. I could only see the anger towards another person. So I drank for more years, you know, and got into more situations. And that's how I lived my life. And there's many stories that I could, you know, could talk about. And I don't mean, when I say stories, I don't mean as though they're nice stories or, you know, they're like this. Alcoholism is not a fun thing. You know, I don't talk about alcoholism as, you know, I'm certainly not a celebrity, and I'm certainly not a person that chooses to talk about alcoholism that, you know, is going to put me a little bit higher than other people or on a pedestal, because I'm not, because I ended up with nothing in my life when I was drinking. You know, the emptiness that I had inside, the loneliness, you know, as we do say, you know, the hole in the soul. You know, I kept trying to fill that hole in the soul with drink. And of course, what it did was, you know, it deadened all the feelings all the time. And, you know, that's what I was a merry-go-round. The more I drank, the more I tried to forget. And you know, the curious thing about being an alcoholic, this alcoholic, was I held a job down, you know. I brought two kids up that was very difficult to bring up because, you know, here I am drinking and trying to look after two kids and work. That was a difficult area because I was so wrapped up in the drink, because I really thought, look at me, Jesus, you know, if you had my life, you'd understand why I'm drinking the way I am. Sure, look, I have to manage this, I have to manage that. But I only seen my side of things. That's all I ever seen, you know, and a drink will fix everything. And unfortunately, drink didn't fix things. And, you know, my kids seen a lot of me being drunk. You know, I used to bring them away, but they seen me collapse. I mean, one of the most embarrassing things that I've ever had in my drinking days is to collapse in Paris on the street and have a complete blackout and not remember to this day what actually happened. But to be there and the fear and the thoughts of what actually could have happened to those kids, my kids, by my actions. You know, I mean, you know, I had many times in my drinking times where I was drinking like you know, taking risks and that, you know, but what I did with the kids and that by drinking, and, you know, them coming to me after work when I'd be in the pub, and they'd come after school into the pub, you know, like alcoholism is a huge effect on the family, a huge effect. But there is hope. And, you know, I never had hope when I was drinking, because I used to think I was just a low life and I was a waste of space. And who would ever want to be bothered with me? And of course, relationships that I had were always a disaster because I was full of low self-esteem. And I was afraid that any woman that looked at me was going to dump me even before I even got going with her. And because I was full of low self-esteem. And you know, my drinking was just messy. It was messy. But
Tom, you know, we appreciate you, you know, coming in and telling the story. It's incredible listening to you just there. You know, like when I heard that John confirmed this meeting with you, is telling me we have someone from the AA coming on. I was incredibly a bit apprehensive, to be honest with you. I come from a family that have a lot of drinking in the culture as well, and just listening to your story there, it's just like, wow, it's like you're explaining my childhood to me, and it's incredible. And just can you just tell us, like, where you're at now compared to where you've been, and the journey you took, the absolute realization that you needed to change?
well, Mac, that's a great question, and that is the great gift of recovery. you know, for me, I hit two rock bottoms. The first one didn't really work because I wasn't, you know, there is a saying that, you know, when I'm ready for it, it'll come, you know, and, you know,
Yeah.
and I wasn't ready for it the first time around. But the second time around, you know, I had what we call a psychic change, and something had clicked in me because alcohol wasn't working. Now, the strange thing is, you know, when I hit the second rock bottom again, I didn't want to think, I didn't want to believe it was alcohol was the problem. I wanted to believe it was psychiatric help I really needed, and I went to a doctor in town in Dublin. I was drinking in Thomas Street, and I went into a doctor and I said, "Look, can you get me locked up in a mental institution because I just can't cope."
Mhm.
And the doc, and you know, it's strange. It doesn't happen that way. That's not how life goes. But I end up going to see a psychiatrist who the first thing, and you know, it was lovely seeing the psychiatrist. She was a beautiful psychiatrist, and she suggested that I do something about the alcohol. And I went to a centre in Tala, Glen Abbey, and it's an alcohol treatment centre run by the HSE. And I
Right.
went there, and you know, I'd been there once before, but I went back to a counsellor that I'd been to before, and that is where my recovery began. And I joined in there. I did a 16-week program in there, which was half a day every week for 16 weeks. The job that I worked in, you know, were so good to me. They could have sacked me so many times, but and I was scared shitless because I said to one of the counselors that I'd been to before, I said, "How am I going to tell the job?" And she said, "You know, I'll write you a letter if you like and explain that if they can let you go for half a day every week
Mhm.
for 16 weeks, and then there's a 2-year aftercare once a month." And I went to that job, and you know, I was always a scared person. I was afraid of confrontation, but something had happened in me that I wanted a change. I had no idea where I was going to go. So I went to the job with the letter. I spoke to my director and the supervisor, and I was honest with them. And you know, it just shows me the power of recovery because they agreed and said, no problem going half a day. We'll support you on that. And I came up with a deal with them where the 4 hours thereabouts that I would take every Tuesday, I would work those hours up after work, hour for hour, and pay them
Right.
back that way. And they agreed to that. And I was so, and I to this day, and that's a long time ago with that job, but I am so grateful to that job for giving me the chance to work this recovery. And when I went to the center, I met with there was 3 guys and 4 women and 2 counselors on the program. And I'd never met these people before, but we had a common bond, and the common bond was alcohol. Because, you know, the group that I was with, we could all identify with the unmanageability of what alcohol had done. You know, what alcohol, the taking that first drink, what it causes, that chain reaction of wanting more and not being able to stop. And that's where my recovery began. That's where I got the first flickers of hope. And I will always be eternally grateful to that centre and to 2 of the counsellors and other people that were there that were so good to me. And from that centre, they suggested to go to meetings, you know, recovery meetings. And so I went along to recovery meetings, and I've still been going to the 12-step program, and that's a good number of years today. And I'm grateful for that because, you know, the rock bottom that I hit, and I like to think of it this way for me. I like to believe that my higher power, as what we call it in recovery, you know, your higher power can be what you choose it to be. It doesn't have to be God. It can be God. It can be a group of people. Whatever you want to choose, because the recovery program is not about religion, and it's not about, you know, you have to do this, you have to do that. It's all suggestions. There's 12 steps, and you know, you find a sponsor and you work the 12 steps. And you know, the 12 steps is the liberation out of alcoholism. For me, it certainly is and was. And you know, By coming into the program, by hitting the rock bottom, my higher power, I believe, let me go to the lowest place that I could go so that I could get on the road of recovery. And I like to think today that, the lowest part of my life was the best part of my life, because I was only going to come up from that. Although I used to think, oh, that was the end of my days. It wasn't, it was only the beginning. And, for this person here, I've never looked back since the day I've come into recovery. And I'm grateful for that. And what recovery has given me is it's given me the ability to look within myself and to see that I'm not the most horrible person that I thought I was. And that, I'm just another person doing my best on this road of recovery.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's
Amazing.
I really appreciate you sharing that, Tom, because first of all, your choice of beers is definitely strange for a young man. I can imagine you must have stood out like a sore thumb with 2 bottles of Guinness and a small bottle of whiskey and red lemonade. Because even if I had that years ago, I would have stood out as well. But a lot of what you are saying, like I have definitely I've definitely had my own fair share. I have many and many battle times with alcohol, be it the good times and the bad times. I mean, I think, God, I'm so lucky for the wife that I have, because I would say 99% of women on the planet would have just told me to just f off. I can't even deal with you. I, s- I- my experience with it was is that it's always been a thing. Like, I mean, years ago, I would try and get whatever money I could, and just go to the back of a field. We'd sit there. It didn't matter if it was raining or whatever, and we drink like cans of Dutch Gold, and I mean, it was melody, but it was just a thing to do. Like, you'd get wasted and go home and get given out by your parents and stuff, but it didn't bother you. You'd continuously keep doing it, and when I got older, like, unfortunately, I just didn't learn from that, where I spent some amount of money on alcohol. And as you were saying, like, you blacked out. I've had a couple of times where I've blacked out. I remember one time I walked home from town. I don't remember walking home, but I did. I used to do that a lot. I used to walk home, and that's quite dangerous late in the morning. But I remember just waking up in the bed one time, and my wife said, like, don't ever do that again, And I said, what? And she said, well, I just opened the front door to see if you were coming home, like, and you were just outside with the keys in the door, and you were just slumped down the side of the door, like, out cold. And she had to, like, basically drag me like a dead body through the hall and lift me up onto. Now, I'm not a heavy guy, but still, 3 o'clock in the morning, that's not a nice thing for your wife to have to do. Um, I think my last one that really, like, I don't drink as much as I used to anymore. I still do have a drink, but I'm a very, very low drinker now. Whereas, because my problem is once I start, I can't stop. If I have, like, once I get over that 4 5 into 6 mark, I'm in gear then, and I just don't have this where I chill out and enjoy a beer. I just want to keep throwing them in till there's nothing left on the table. And that's where I realized later on that you're actually not enjoying it. You're just it you're actually not enjoying the fun of having a beer and having the social aspect of it. You just want to get absolutely pissed, because I came to the conclusion that I just had no control over myself, and that's why I did that. And I remember only recently I was at a friend's house, and they broke out a bottle of cachaça, and for anyone who doesn't know, that's like a Brazilian style whiskey. It's very, very potent. But I drank so much of that we were walking home, and there's me, like, making a show of myself, walking out in the middle of the road, falling over. I had my son looking at me. And then the most embarrassing thing happened. I woke up the next day, and I swear, it was like someone had put the weight of, like, weight of the world on the side of my head. I just couldn't stand up properly. I couldn't function. And then my son showed me a video of me falling over, and I kind of just I haven't really drank at all. Like, I have had a few beers, but like the max I've had is like, I'd say I can do two or three beers, and that's it. And what I've done in my own self is as a little way of just combating what I would normally do is, if it's just a normal time, or I'm sitting there having a drink with my wife, or I'm having a quick chat with someone, I'll limit myself to 2 to 3 max. And after that third, I'm done for the evening. If it's a wedding or something, like, yeah, okay, maybe I might go out on a little bit of a limb, or I haven't seen someone for a good while and we're out having a bit of a laugh, but I know to control myself, you know. But when you get little things like that, like the way you said you had um a scary time in France, like that for me was shocking, because like I didn't want my son seeing that, you know. Plus, when you see a recording the next day, I don't know, it's worse than if you had seen it any other time. But like, you could see it during the week and it'd be bad, but the next day it really just shocks you, you know. Whereas like the good thing that I've done, and the way you were saying, like the Alcohol Anonymous, and then, you know, everyone has their own way of finding stuff. Be it, some people do spirituality, some people join groups or whatever. My way of combating it is I find training is what really helps me when I'm doing physical activity, or I'm doing some sports activity, or I'm going for my swim out in the sea. I personally, I don't do stuff like that. I don't get caught up in stuff, and it actually helps stop me from it helps stop me from
Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's fine. It helps stop me from the urges, or let's say during the pandemic, like, you know, I would have been sitting there having a few beers, and then I would have said, right, come on, get on the bike and let's go. And that stops me. So I know what you're saying, when everyone has something that they do, and it's good to have that to combat that, you know, because some people just it doesn't work for them, you know, and you know, that there's nothing wrong with that either, you know. That's where the problem
Especially if it's starting to become a routine now. You know, especially with the pandemic, and we discussed this on our mental health one, John, about slipping into these kind of areas where, because you're on your own, you're bored,
yeah.
to occupy you. If you've, you know, if you're in any way mentally inclined to be have demons in your head, you will try and use that. But you know, there is something, Tom, I would love to ask you about. I'd love to kind of delve in a bit more. This 12-step process that you discussed when you're in recovery, you're very complimentary to the healthcare system, and to your not psychiatrists, but your medical health professionals that helped you and direct you in the right direction. But is this 12-step process, is this still something that's practiced today? Is this something that's outdated? Do you still talk to people, you know, about this process still? And can you elaborate more on it? Like, what is the 12 steps? Can you break it down for us, please, Tom?
That's a great question. That I was just thinking
Yeah.
about. I was thinking about the 12 steps, you know, and the 12 steps came. I mean, this program came around in 1935, you know, and it started by two guys talking together, and by the two of them talking together, they realized they weren't drinking, and that's the essence of this program. And you know, there's 12 steps, there's 12 traditions, and there's 12 concepts. The 12 steps is about, you know, me. The 12 traditions is about the group, and the 12 concepts is about the service of the groups, you know. But the steps begin, as everything begins, with step one. And step one is about, you know, I'm powerless over alcohol and my life. And the second part of that is my life is unmanageable. And like, there's two parts to that. So when I get step one, and I realized that, you know, I'm powerless over alcohol. So what that means for me is I'm not a person that will go and take one drink. I never did that in my life. If I went today, you know, God forbid, if I got a insane thought, or I wasn't doing the program, or I wasn't practicing, and I decided, I feck it, I'll go take, I would never go and take one drink. I would go back to even
Yeah.
worse than the way I was when I stopped. So there's 12 steps. One is about, being powerless over alcohol. The second part of that step is, my life is unmanageable. My life was in bits. I was the only one that didn't see it, and I couldn't work out what it was. So step two is, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And what that means is, it's, again, it's not your heart, it's a higher power, but it doesn't have to be a religious icon,
I understand, yeah.
So we say higher power. So, you don't have to say it's whatever you choose. But my higher power restored me to sanity because I was insane when I was drinking. And step three is made a decision. So I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, our higher power, if you like,
Yeah.
as we understood him. And that's why that as we understood him is in that, because it doesn't have to be God or Muhammad or, Buddha. It doesn't have to be. And step four is, is where I need to start doing the work. So step
Right.
four is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself, ourselves. So what that means is the damage that I've done, the resentments that I've had, through my life, I need to put them down. I need to put all this down on paper. I need to look at my part, not other people's part. I need to look at what did I do? Where did I cause harm? And what was my part in that harm? Where was I to blame? And look at the patterns of what caused, the resentments. And then step five is, so what do I do when I've wrote it down? I need to admit it to someone. I need to talk to someone. So I admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So what that means is I talk to someone, and at the time I spoke to it, and that's why we have a sponsor. A sponsor is a person who has gone through these steps, who knows the steps, has gone through the steps with his sponsor, and has been sober for a substantial amount of time, so that when he's showing me what to do, I know he knows what he's talking about. So I trust him, and I build a trust with him. And my sponsor said to me at the time, you can share that step five with me, or you can go to someone else, like a priest or a monk or whatever. And I chose a priest in Mount Argus, because I felt like I'd never meet this man again, and I was afraid of all the stuff. I'm going to talk to another human being. So I went and I shared that with him. Step six then is, it's we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And defects of character is like our sins, and selfishness and stuff that I kept, and stuff today that I watch for. If I'm being dishonest, selfish, not being open, being secretive, I need to watch all these things, because they're trapdoors. So watch for them. So step seven is humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. So I can't actually take them away from myself, but I need to ask a spiritual being to help me to take them away. So I ask my higher power to remove them from me. Okay.
Right.
And then step 8 is another where I need to start putting action in again, which is made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So the people that I wrote down on step 4 that I hurt, what can I do about that I've hurt these people? Okay, I can look at it anyway. Like I said, I didn't mean to hurt them, but I did hurt them. So now it's important for me to right the wrongs that I caused, not that what other people have done. So it's up to me to make amends to the people. So what I need to do is I need to put them down on a list and be willing then to actually go to the people that I've hurt and ask them, can I make amends for the damage that I've caused? And if they are okay with that, that's fine. If they're not okay with that, that's also fine. That is their right. Because what I'm doing for me and what recovery is all about is It's clearing away the wreckage of the past. It's getting rid of that person that I was in those days. I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to go around hurting people anymore. I don't want to go around hurting myself. So then step 9 is another action one. So step 9 is make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them. So if I'm going to make amends to yourself, either one of you guys, I can't make it that I'm going to hurt you people. Like if I've had an affair with your girlfriend or something like that, I can't, if I go and say, oh, look, I just want to make amends to, I've had, and I'm going to hurt you by doing that. That's not what making amends is about, and
true.
It's not about hurting the person that I've hurt, because then I become self-righteous, and that's not what these steps are about. So step 10. So I've done the hard work there, right, up to there. So now I go step 10, which is continue to take personal inventory. And when we are wrong, promptly admit it. So now what I have is maintenance steps. So now what I do is I look over my day and see, okay, did I hurt somebody? Okay, if I said something that was really nasty to someone, or I hurt their feelings, or I did something not right, well, I can make amends immediately for that. I don't have to keep that secret or say I'm not going to apologize to that person. And so we move on to step 11, which is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And what that means is, I look over my day and I see, did I hurt anybody? Could I have done a better day? Is there any way I could improve that day? And did I do it meditate? Did I start my day? Because I start my day off by asking my higher power for help every morning. I get down on my knees and ask for help. And at night, I give thanks. And I say, thank you for keeping me sober today. And I hope I haven't hurt anyone's feelings today. And I look over, I review my day. And it's about sitting with myself for a few minutes during the day and meditating and just having a chat with my higher power and asking, look, can you give me a dig out today? I'm trying to do the best that I can. And the last step then is step 12. And step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening. As a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And what that means is what has been freely given to me, it's now, I won't say it's a duty or that, but I've been freely given this gift of sobriety. So it's, for me to keep it, I need to give it away. And, the primary purpose in recovery is to stay sober and to help another alcoholic. And that's the primary purpose. But, it's about helping another person, which helps me. And that's how I stay sober on a daily basis.
That's amazing.
Just to stick with this, Tom, and just to explain for people, because some people, we have a video on this as well, Tom, and just to carry on from your step 12, and that is just absolutely amazing. Like that insight, John, is just absolutely amazing. But like your last point there to pass it on, and just for people that are probably watching this, Tom asked not to be shown on our video, so we have we don't have a screen for him. He asked to remain anonymous, in line with his commitment to his code of practice at the moment, and just to carry on that, like that's some process you had, and I think that's amazing that you had like a sponsor, a mentor.
Yeah, that's right.
He would have went through that same process as you.
Yeah,
faced them demons and helped you.
Yeah.
How gifted did you feel that you had someone that understood you going through that process?
Well, you see, when you come into recovery, what's suggested is that you look around the rooms and you see somebody who is who would have drank similarly, and you approach that person and ask that person, would they mind being your sponsor? And it's up to that person then to say, I will. It's also up to that person to say, maybe I can or I can't. And when you work with the person, you know, like when I worked with my sponsor, I worked to the best of my ability. You know, I didn't really understand all the steps. I didn't understand the new way of living, but that's why he was able to guide me. And you know, we have a book that has it all listed out from page 1 to 164. It lays it all out. It lays all the steps out, you know, and gives a good working um template of the way to work these steps. And it gives a guidance in these steps. And you know, this program is you know, it's been going since the 30s, the late 30s.
Mhm.
And it works. And you know, we also have a saying that, you know, it works if you work it, so work it because you're worth it.
Yeah, I was kind of like teasing that as well. I was just like, it sounds like a very long process, and it's kind of like I'd say something like gamblers, like that have an addiction that or any kind of addiction will go through something similar like that. You can't just go through it. You have to buy into it. You have to become it.
Yeah,
It's not
and you
something that you
see,
can't half put your foot in. You
well, you
have
know,
to
it's
want to
but
do it.
yeah, well, it's also I suppose, like, you know, there's no such thing for me as taking one drink. You know, one drink means I need a gallon of alcohol, and even then it's not enough. So coming into AA is about, it's a lifetime process, but the gift of this program is it's one day at a time, and I only have today to stay sober. So by working the program, which I never got that concept, like the song says, one day at a time, I never understood that concept, because I used to think, well, what about next week? You know, because I'm going to a funeral next week, or I'm going to a wedding next week. So I mean, what about, I don't live in the future, because the future causes me, and we call it the wreckage of the future. Because the more I think of the future, which is not here, or the past, which is the wreckage of the past, which is, I can't do anything. I can't change the past. I can't change the future. But if I live in the now, I can work the program in the now, which is so much easier than trying to work in the future. And that's the way we work it. I work it that way. You know, I get up in the morning, I ask for help, and I just try to stay sober for one day at a time. And I think of the suffering alcoholic during the day, and I reach out and I pick up the phone, I ring a few people, I text a few people, I go to meetings. You know, I share at meetings of what's going on in my life. And if I see a newcomer, I reach out to a newcomer, and I give my phone number to the people. And you know, this fellowship is about a we. You know, when I was drinking, it was all about the I. You know, it was I this, I that, you know. But this is about a we. It's a program of we. We are here for each other, to help each other. And by me helping another person, they're helping me.
Tom, I have to say, I just listening to the 12 steps, I love the way it builds itself up to, uh, I don't know if I'm correct listing it, but like an acknowledgement, a kind of an assessment. You take like action on that assessment, and then you have a reflection on the action that you've taken.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
I think that's profound, because that's a really, really good way of uh, keeping your mind clear and actually justifying, like, oh yeah, I did that. Why did I do that? And what can I do to make amends on it? And I love the way you said that. Like, let's say, for example, you had slept with someone's wife. I'm not saying you did, but I'm using what you just said. And the fact that you acknowledge that, like, trying to make up for that by talking to that person would actually only cause a negative reaction, which is a great thing, part of this, I suppose, the steps that you have. Because I suppose if you were to tell someone to try and make amends for everything they've done, it could end up pushing them back to where they first were,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
I suppose, like, my question while I was listening there is just so people understand, because a lot of people think that like alcohol is just, oh, it's just nothing. It's only a can of beer. It's just, you know, you drink, you get up the next day with a hangover, and oh, that's nothing. It's grand. Could you explain to myself and just people in general, like what is it that separates someone who has a problem with alcohol as opposed to someone who just would just have a few drinks on a Friday and wake up? What separates that person to the person that wants to continue each day? What fuels the motive for it? That would be my question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I suppose what separates me from a so-called, we call them so-called norms, a so-called normal drinker is a person who can go out and have a couple of drinks and leave them. You know, maybe they'll have 1, 2, 3, and there are people who go out and get drunk, but their life's not unmanageable. They can get up the next day, go to work. It doesn't affect them. You know, they're not constantly obsessively thinking about alcohol. Their life's not completely unmanageable with alcohol. You know, the difference between me and a person who can drink is they can stop. I can't. You know, one drink for me will never be enough, and one crate of beer still won't be enough. And the thing is, you know, the insane part of my alcoholism when I was drinking is if I buy 8 cans of beer, you know, the minute I start drinking them cans, I'm obsessively thinking I'm going to run out. So my thoughts is going to where am I going to get more beer? And you know, the worst case scenario is if I wake up in the morning and there's no beer and I've no money, you know, that is desperation because I've no way of getting my cure. And you know, for me, alcohol, I believed was the cure to everything in my life. I know today it was only the tip of the iceberg. When I put down alcohol, then I started looking at me. That's something I never did when I was drinking. I never had the ability to do that.
Very interesting. Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to talk there, Tom.
No.
Yeah. You see, a lot of people think that it's just, oh, you know, it wouldn't affect me, or I'd never be like that or anything. But like, someone who like, let's say has alcoholism, like they don't walk around with like a hat on them saying that they have that. Like it's very interesting that you touched on that you had like, you know, a job as well. And I'm keen to know, how were you able to like actually function and perform your work if you were like, you know, drunk, or like, you know, were you drinking on the job, or did you ever do that, or was it just when you left work that was when you did it, or you were straightforward with work?
No, there's many times, you know, I've thought about this so many times over the years. The job I worked for maybe some unknown reason, or maybe my higher power was looking after me, which I really believe my higher power was, because that job sacked people for a lot of not so much serious reasons, but they sacked people, you know. Now, I was very young in that job, but I can't tell you why or how that job didn't sack me, because they had many reasons that they could have. Because I was a person that I would be drinking, like I used to think Friday night was my legitimate night to drink. So I used to think I've worked all week, I'm entitled to drink, you know, have a drink on Friday. And so Friday and Saturday were my 2 days. Sunday was a day where I'd be like, okay, can't really drink, but I drink nearly as much. But come Monday, you know, Sunday night I'd be sweating, thinking, oh shit, I have to go to work, and I'd be thinking about it, go to work, and I'd be trying to think of ways that maybe I wouldn't have to go to work. But if I had bottles in the house, you know, the bottles will be calling to me in the nighttime, almost talking to me, saying, you know, have a drink, so you'll be okay. Take a drink. And I'd have the sweats when I'd be in bed, and I'd be very irritable and discontented, as we say. And I would not understand that and this is what separates me from normal drinkers. I wouldn't understand that I have made that decision to take that drink, even although I'm toying with the idea in my head saying, oh, maybe I won't, I'll turn over now and I won't. I have made a decision. I'm powerless over that alcohol. I'm going to take that drink. And that drink is going to lead me to the unmanageability of I'll get up in the morning and I won't go to work. I used to say to myself, I could walk out the gate, and if I go right, I'm going to work. If I'm going left, I'm going to the pub in town. And I would have my work clothes like a kind of a uniform on. I would really want to go to work, but I would have the shakes and I would get up and I would be full of guilt and remorse and shame. I used to suffer from terrible shame, and I'd go out the door and I'd hope no one would see me. So if I could go out when it's dark, it's almost like a cat sneaking down the road. I'd sneak down the road to go to get the bus into town. And when I'm on that bus, I think everybody on that bus is looking at me because I'm supposed to be in work. I'm not supposed to have sneaked out of the house. Does everyone know what I'm doing? So sometimes I would only make it into the quays and I'd get off at the quays and walk the rest of the way. But the job, I'd have to make a call or get someone to ring the job and say, because we didn't have mobiles in them days. So you couldn't text someone in the job, you had to make that phone call and say, I can't come in because I'm sick. So there's many a Monday that I would, and I mean, I would say I'm off the Monday sick, but I'd be drunk. I'd be in the pub drinking. I'd be in the early house. Then I'd be in a few different pubs and I'd be drunk again. And then I'd have to go to work the next day. And then again, the merry-go-round happens where I don't want to go the next day because I'm just as bad as the day before. Job's going to know me. So there was many times that I had nearly a week off work. And then I'd have to go into work, face the supervisor, and they knew what was going on. And I just have to say, they could have sacked me so many times and I wouldn't have had a leg to stand on. But for some reason, they didn't. I kept the job. The crazy thing about me is, when I wasn't drinking, I was a good worker. But when I was hungover, I was not used to anyone. And when I wasn't in work, and I didn't. This is the thing of this is the part of the program of making amends. And when I'm not drinking and I did the steps, I could go in and be a productive worker. I mean, they're employing me, they're paying me wages to do a job. And when I was drinking, I wasn't doing that. But that employer was very good to me. I ended up that what they used to do was they'd send me to the company doctor, and I used to go to the company doctor, and I'd be crying on the company doctor saying, oh look, I just can't cope with life, and I think I'm going insane. I'd say all these things, and they'd say to me, yeah, okay, take a day, and then you have to go back to work. But that was a merry-go-round that I was on for a long time with that job. And, I caused a huge effect on that job because there wasn't many of us working in the warehouse. But, I got through that. And one of the gifts of the program for me is that company seen me getting sober. But, getting sober doesn't mean that the company should promote me. Because I thought in early recovery that now that I'm a productive worker, they should really, look up to me now and say, oh, we're going to promote you. But I did forget the damage that I had caused in that job. I wasn't a reliable worker. So just because I'd sobered up now, that they're going to turn around and say, oh, he's so reliable nowadays. I have to work for the respect and get that back. I hope that helps a bit.
Yeah, no, that was a great insight. The only reason I just wanted to ask that question was I just want people to understand the difference firsthand, so they can see that's where you'll get to, and for them to understand that's what the motivation is, and that's where you touched on some great points, get the fact that you would get off the bus at an earlier like stop, because you thought that like people realized that you were, but it was all really in your head
Yeah,
more
that's
so.
right. Yeah.
But in order for you, because I suppose, would it be a case that like you in your head it was like they're all normal and I'm not, and they know that I'm not normal, therefore I have to get off, and I can't deal with that.
Well, the interesting thing about that is, getting on a bus reeking of alcohol from the night before, uh, possibly not shaved, um, after sleeping in the same clothes maybe. Now, sometimes if I put the shirt on from work, it would be fairly clean and but no deodorant will get rid of the smell of alcohol, or no cleaning the face is going to hide the bloodshot eyes.
True.
And I had a face that, it's kind of called like a whiskey face, a big red face.
Yeah.
And of
Yeah.
course, when I'm standing there, I got that, I used to have that paranoid look, and I would be, that kind of
Guilty
being
conscience look.
shaky, guilty and being shaky.
Yeah.
And of course, the people on the bus, what's lovely about people going to work is men and women, they would have nice clothes on, but they'd also have that healthy look and that smell of aftershave and perfume.
Yeah.
And you could see them and they'd be talking and they'd be laughing, and I would be dying inside because the only thing I wanted was drink. And many a time, I even went under bridges to drink if I had cans, so as I could sit there drinking because I couldn't afford to go to a pub.
Wow, Tom, like just your insight there. Like I don't know like how I could probably compliment you on being so generous with your experience and your knowledge with us. It's great. You're the type of person that we love talking to. You're the type of person that we wanted to start off this podcast with, and we're so grateful. I really can't thank you enough. I'm going to take a bit of a divergent question, Tom, if you don't mind. It's just something that I've been contemplating as well, because, as times are changing, I thought it'd be a good, better person to ask than yourself. Is the trend of these AA meetings and the trend of alcoholism, I'm one of these people. I have a lot of faith in the youth. Okay, am I right in saying that things are getting better? There's not too many people falling into the alcohol trap that there was basically probably the 80s, the 90s, the late 90s. Would it be right to be positive, Tom?
Well, that's a very interesting question as well, and I wouldn't quote statistics, right? But what I would say is alcoholism is rampant in society, and alcoholism has no respect of color, creed, or social status. It is in all walks of life, and there's alcoholics in families, and they're functioning. People can function as an alcoholic, but it's not decreased. And recovery is there for everybody. And it doesn't matter about the status of whether you're a millionaire, whether you're down in the streets, whether you're an ordinary person. It doesn't matter about that. Trends, I don't go with that. And in recovery for me, I don't work in trends, or I don't know what trends are now, because this program is about I do this 12-step program for me, and because I benefit from it, people around me benefit from me. The one thing I know about recovery for me is that because I'm in it a while, but that doesn't mean that I've become an elder statesman, that I know more than anybody. It doesn't work that way. It's,
Right.
it's a daily reprieve from alcohol. And to get a daily reprieve from alcohol is I need to keep working the steps one day at a time. And the program is there for anybody to come in. You only have to, and the way the program works is, you see, and what it was for me is nobody can pick up the phone for me and say, I'll do the phone for you and get you into a centre and that. I'm the one that had to make the phone call, and that was a difficult decision to make because that was the onus on me to do that, you know. So, you know, yeah, what society is doing, I'm not sure about how I could answer that because I don't really know how society or what the trends are, or that's a question that I don't know. But what I do know is that the program is there for anybody who wants it, and it will work for you. You know, you just got to come along and do what's suggested. And it's only, you know, it's a program of suggestions. There's no have this, you know, there's no you should do this. There's no being told what to do. It's all about taking part in the program.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's great to hear that there is help out there, and I suppose there is a lot of people out there that don't actually realize that they can get help. It's kind of like you have to hear it through a friend kind of thing. People are really out. Like, where would you go if I have a problem and I don't know you, I don't know anyone out there, but I need help, would be the first port of call be a doctor to me? And
well, you could look up a directory and
yeah,
and ring, you know, what's called the GSO, the General Service Office, which is in Dublin, and you know, you make a phone call there, and there's where you can go to your doctor. But you know, the first port of call can be, you know, to pick up and ring AA, which is in the phone book, and ask for help. And you know what we do in that is somebody will either meet you or take you to a meeting, and you know, you come to a meeting, your first meeting, and you will be very welcomed. And it's, you know, it's not meant, you don't have to get it all immediately, but you know, you get suggestions to keep coming back. And you know, you get a welcome pack as well that gives you you know, ideas to look up and literature to look up. We call it conference approved literature, to look up and to get a, you know, an understanding of what alcoholism is and the causes of it. Am I an alcoholic? You know, because the only requirement to come to meetings is a desire to stop drinking, which is tradition 3. And that's all you need, is a desire to stop drinking, and you are a member.
Tom, if for example, someone is listening to us right now, and they're at the point where they just can't handle it anymore, and they know that it's more than an issue. It is a problem, but they're very, very apprehensive, or they're nervous, or they're like, they feel like they'll be shamed if they were to go help. Do you have any, even just a conclusive like something advice for them to maybe like to make that change, or to go and get help?
Yeah, I you know something, my own experience was I went through a doctor. I ended up, I didn't know where to go. Now, I suppose there was kind of 2 elements to it. One, I needed to get a doctor's note because I was missing out of work. So I knew I had to go to a doctor, but also I really felt I was going insane. Because I'd been drinking a lot, and I felt like I think I was going suicidal, you know. And I thought like my life, everything was collapsing around me. This is the perception that I had. So not to labor on the on that time, but I ended up going to a doctor. So my first port of call was a doctor, and the doctor suggested to me, and in Dublin there's 2 centres, which are run by the HSE. One is called Stanhope Street, and the other is the Glen Abbey Centre in Tallaght. And you know, depending on the side of the Liffey you're on, you can go to either centre. and they run. Now I'm not up to date because it's a good long time since I went there, but I'm not sure if they still run the programs there. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they used to. But the doctor would be able to recommend a place. There is other centers where, you know, there's rehab centers where you can go, and you know, you can spend a few weeks there, and you can dry out there, and you can learn the program that way. There is the meetings to come to. There is the number, the phone number, which is in the book, and there is to talk to people who have gone through exactly what you go through, because you are not alone, and you are not the only one that has gone through this. Most people who are in a recovery program know exactly where you are, can identify. That's what I would say.
Wow. Yeah, the HSE, or if you're another person, that your National Health Services or whatever it may be, you wouldn't be expected to pay a fee for this. Am I right in saying that, Tom? Because I'm sure a lot of people in that position are in that position because of poverty. To ask a fee from would be unreasonable. Am I correct? Would I be?
Well, I tell you what I do know. I do know when I went, and I went through the Glenabbey Centre, I didn't have to pay nothing there when they ran the program. They ran a 12-week program. Now, I do know that there are centres in Athy, in Kildare.
Yeah.
There are other centres in Limerick and that. And I'm not 100% sure on the way it works, but I know that because the program is longer, it's in-house as well. So you could be there for 3 months, but you pay something. You know, maybe you pay your what we used to call the labour. You know, there is some sort of payment that's paid. I mean, there are
To be people out there that you know, the thought of giving up some of that dole,
Yeah.
you know, fair enough, if you can afford private care, kudos to you.
Yeah.
But the thought of giving up a few quid of your dole might discourage you, and you might try attempt to drive yourself, which, let's be honest about it, you know, the success rate, I'm sure, is not great. So yeah, that's great that you can get this service for free. I'm not too sure how it's vetted and stuff like that, but would I be right? And there's a certain level of confidentiality as well with this, Tom. I'm sure a lot of people would be, like John said, a bit embarrassed, shameful, and that to know that if the neighbour knows that they're going to AA meetings could probably be that you know, the straw that broke the camel's back. Am I right, Tom?
Well, you know, funny enough that you say that. You know, that brings me to another area. You know, this COVID has been a blessing in many ways.
Yeah.
Because what it has done is it has closed a lot of meetings down, because there's been no face-to-face meetings in a lot of countries. So what it has done is it has opened up the internet to Zoom meetings. And you know, and I have met a lot of people in this year, nearly 2 years of this COVID, where people have been coming to online meetings and have stayed sober. You know, and that has been a difficult. Some of them have only got sober on Zoom.
Wow.
Which in itself is a miracle. And now that we're back, we're slowly getting back to face-to-face meetings. Now they can come along and we can meet face-to-face, which is even better. But it is possible to get sober online, you know, by coming to meetings and by finding other people to talk to, because what it's all about, the program of recovery is all about the we, you know. It's about talking to one another and sharing with one another, picking the phone up, meeting for coffee and going to meetings and you know, then looking at the steps.
Wow, what do you think of that, John? People are getting sober online. That's amazing.
I think that's incredible, because like the Zoom aspect, although it's a fantastic element, and it's like it's something that people can use. I can imagine like the toughness of not having like being around someone personally and speaking to someone, because you know when you talk to someone face to face, the reality and the what they say to you kind of hits more in depth. But the fact that people have used Zoom, it probably has shown them how strong of a person they were, but they didn't realize that. If that makes sense, Tom.
Yes, it does. And you know what the gift of Zoom is? You have like a worldwide fellowship. So you
Wow.
can have a meeting up to 40 people, 50 people. You can have conventions, all day
Incredible.
conventions where there's people from all over the world, you know, that normally wouldn't be able to meet because you'd have to travel. But you can have meetings where people are from all over the world meeting together and having a convention or a meeting. You know, it is a huge, huge gift. And what it shows me is that, you know, alcoholics, we're willing to go, well, and I shouldn't say we, and because there's no such thing as we in certain ways, but like I'm willing to go to any length to stay sober. So, you know, Zoom for me has worked really well. And a lot of people I know, we love Zoom. And it is a great gift because, you know, without Zoom, it would have been even more difficult because with lockdowns that happened, you know, not being able to travel, being, you know, where I am, there's curfews there was where you had to be in at a certain time and that, and you weren't to meet other people. And with Zoom, you could meet, you know, I mean, I was having, you know, daily meetings with people on Zoom, having one-to-one conversations, having phone conversations, going to meetings. And, you know, like I go to a meeting every morning. Sometimes I go at 7 a.m. and sometimes I go at 8 a.m. And the meetings are an hour. And like, it's just a wonderful way to begin the morning.
Incredible. I love it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that is incredible, isn't it?
And the interesting thing about the Zoom is like, you're like, I can imagine there's like, you know, because I know we've talked a bit of the negativity part of it, but like, I can imagine there's some great crack and some good networking opportunities for people to just like talk to each other. Like, because obviously someone from a different nationality, like, you know, there's probably going to be a bit of crack talking to someone anyway, you know. So it's I'd say it's all good in that way.
Well, you know what it also shows you is it also shows me that it doesn't matter where in the world the person's from, I can identify with that person. So
True.
if the person is from Sweden, Japan, or China, and we're all at the same meeting in Australia, and we're all at the same meeting, we're all there for the same reason. You know, so the bond, the common thread through our conversation is alcohol. That is the whole common thread is alcohol. And the recovery is in the rooms, and the rooms can be on Zoom or they can be face to face.
I love it. I think this is I think the conversation has just gone so well. Tom, I have to say, the way you've spoke, you're such a chilled out character, man. You spoke just so professionally for someone who wouldn't be on podcasts or whatever. But
Yeah, I'd even love to have this as probably an annual meeting between the three of us again, Tom. Just, you know, like hopefully by then we'll have a build up audience that can relate to these kind of conversations. Like I say, like the great thing about these podcastings and the Zooming is that you can have these honest conversations, and you know, people don't have to go far to look for them. They're not hidden, and you know, conversations that people don't really hear too often. That maybe just a little conversation this making people realize, you know what, there's other people on my level out there. There's people that can help out there, and just hearing a natural flow of a conversation that's positive and productive. I think we're void of it. And I'm so glad to hear that. Like, that's what I thought was amazing when the Zoom meetings were when Alcoholics Anonymous was closed down because of COVID and people coming online. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. I'd love to do this again, Tom. We could definitely make this an annual or bi-yearly thing if you're up for it. Again, like, just being so generous with your experience and knowledge, like, greatly appreciate your time. Really do.
yeah, 100%, Tom. personally speaking, it's been very, like, I've learned a lot of things that I would have just looked at it, but I never understood why the aspect, when I was reading up on even the steps and what makes the person drive and what keeps them doing it, and then what happens afterwards. You've I think hats off to you, man. You've really given us a special download. Thanks very much.
Yeah, and the work you do
Yeah.
for other people, like, and the way, do you know what? The way you respect your anonymity, you know, just kudos to you. What's the word you said? Wasn't it? I can't remember the word you said there, but you're true. You're very true to your cause. Yeah, you command a great respect from us, Tom. Thank you very much.
Well, I'd just like to say, you know, I've got two messages I'd like to finish with is, you know, one, everything that I've learned, all the words that I spoke here tonight didn't come from me. All the words I spoke tonight has come from recovery and come from what I've learned in this program, you know, and the one thing that I treasure the most in my life is recovery, because what recovery has given me is back decency and respect back in my life. And I'd like to say to anybody that's struggling out there with alcohol or, you know, any kind of addiction, there is hope and there is recovery, and it does work. And the 12-step program is there for anybody. Please reach out, you know, make the phone call. It does work, and it you know, it saves you from a lot of years of misery. So, you know, the hope is there. It's an amazing way to live. And I would ask anyone that, you know, is feeling a little bit, pick up the phone. And thanks so much for listening to me.
Listen, it's been our pleasure. We've learned so much. We've had such a, yeah, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed this. So Tom, absolutely, thank you very much. You've been you've actually made me nervous talking to this. I want to talk on the podcast the way so relaxed and confident that you are. Obviously, the Zoom meetings have definitely helped. Definitely 100%.
Oh, that's great.
Thanks very much, Tom.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Talk
Okay.
again soon, hopefully.
Yeah. So listen, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much for listening. You know, please give us a listen. You know, download the episodes, share it with your friends, subscribe. You know, let everybody know. And we're here to just bring out great episodes with, like, hopefully in the future, if we can top Tom, we'll be doing very well. So look, thanks very much for listening to the Jonty and Mac podcast. And Mac, do you want to end on anything?
No, again, just thanks very much to our guest, our first guest of the Jonty and Mac podcast. This is the reason why we set up this podcast, to have these conversations, to get people that can inspire people to be better themselves, and just start the conversations, progressive and positive conversations. And thank you very much, Tom.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tom. Really appreciate that. Right, guys, thank you very much, and see you next time.